Hello, my name is Roberto. In this video we are going to see together how to work with Mexicans. To work internationally we are going to have to work, communicate, negotiate with people from different cultures. We are going to be confronted with cultural differences. We don't communicate, we don't negotiate, we don't all think the same way. We are going to have to adapt to the culture of our foreign clients. Each country has its own culture, each culture is unique and specific, and every time we change countries we will have to adapt to a new cultural reality. In this video we will see how to adapt to the Mexican business culture. If you want to develop your business on the Mexican market, then be attentive because I am going to communicate you the key points to avoid cultural mistakes that could make you lose a lot of time and money. But before I start, I want to clarify some points. 1. Everything you are going to hear in this video will not be 100% true. I'm going to generalize my speech. I'm going to say, for example, Mexicans are not punctual. But said like that, it is not true. Because obviously there are Mexicans who are punctual. What you have to understand is that we are talking about cultural tendencies. Not all Mexicans are not punctual, but the cultural tendency of Mexicans is not to be punctual. Everything you will hear in this video does not apply to 100% of Mexicans. 2. Intercultural management is not an exact science. We are in the social sciences, therefore there are no absolute truths, but as I said, there are trends that help us to better understand a culture and thus better adapt to it. So, let's see how our Mexican friends are in their way of doing business. Mexicans need to know the person with whom they are going to negotiate and work in a long-term relationship. That is why in Mexico the first meeting is not good for negotiating. First we are going to get to know each other. Let's go to lunch and talk about 1,000 different topics except business. This conversation, which seems informal, serves to get to know each other. In reality it serves to generate the necessary trust to talk about business in a second stage. This means that trust in business in Mexico is obtained first with information from the private sphere. The Mexican will ask you questions about his family, his hobbies. He will also talk about his tastes in life and his family. Do not forget that in Mexico there is no barrier between private life and professional life as it may be in other countries. But above all, don't forget that you will also have to take an interest in the private life of your Mexican partner by asking him questions. Show that you are interested in him or her. Socializing is extremely important in Mexico. In Mexico we say, we do business among friends. This does not mean that you have to be friends with all your professional contacts, but that the business relationship goes beyond a strictly business relationship. There is no need to be in a hurry to develop your business in Mexico because, as you will have understood, the time of socialization is long and important. The second point is emotions in business relationships in Mexico. There are countries that developed the more analytical part and other countries that developed more the emotional part. Clearly Mexicans are highly emotional. It is important to know this because it will help us in sales and more generally in our interpersonal relationship with our Mexican partners. If you start the professional relationship with your Mexican partner with technical, professional, sales arguments, it will take you much longer to close the deal. First you must hook the Mexican client or your Mexican partner with emotional arguments. You have to play with emotions to catch him. Don't forget that in Mexico, the salesman is just as important if not more than the product or service he sells. It is common to hear a customer say, I will work with Juan because I like him. Maybe Juan's product is not the best, but if Juan was able to create a very pleasant and friendly atmosphere, he has already gone a long way towards closing the deal. In Mexico it is not necessarily the best or the one with the best product that wins, it is the one with the best relationships and above all the one with the best quality and warmth in his relationships. Business is person to person in Mexico. The most complicated side to manage is the susceptibility of people. The more the country is emotional, the more people are susceptible. And Mexico is highly emotional. This means that we must be very careful about what we say and how we say it, especially when we have to communicate negative things, if the quality of the product that don't correspond to what was agreed, a job badly done, etc. We have to develop a lot of diplomacy, be polite, because the probability that everything is taken personally is great. People can be offended very easily. The third point is the relationship to time for Mexicans. What is meant by the famous ahorita? Mexican time is extremely elastic, random. In reality, Mexicans themselves do not know when it is ahorita. The Mexican intellectual concept of time is that time is cyclical, it is a circle, it is an eternal restart. Time is abundant. What I had to do today, but could not do today, I will do tomorrow. There is no problem, there is time, and there is always time to do things. Also consider that Mexicans are polychronists, that is to say that they know how to manage several tasks at the same time, and the prioritization of the tasks to be done will not necessarily be the same as ours. The sense of urgency may be different. What may be urgent for one may not be for the other. It is important to be clear and agree on what is urgent and what is not. Mexican time is the short term. To develop a project with a Mexican partner, it is advisable to keep your Mexican partner in the short term, not to project it too far in time. The Mexican needs to perceive quick results. Long-term planning, as in other countries, works poorly in Mexico. For these reasons, it is important to be patient and tenacious to develop your business in Mexico. As Mexican time is short-term, this means that Mexicans live in the present moment. The past is past, and the future, by definition, for a Mexican, is unknown. This means that Mexicans do not plan, or plan rarely. They adapt to what is happening in the moment. Fourth point, negotiation with Mexicans. Mexicans are very sociable people, which makes them pleasant people and easily accessible in personal as well as professional relationships. In general, they are comfortable in negotiations because for them a business relationship is a person-to-person relationship. This means that they are at ease in a negotiation. Mexicans tend to do business first with acquaintances, so it is very important not to forget what I mentioned in the first point. First we get to know each other and then we negotiate. Do not want to skip this stage of getting to know each other. It is the important stage of socialization that is indispensable to move on to the negotiation stage. It is the socialization that opens the door to the real negotiation. Your Mexican partner will find it more difficult to do business with strangers. Take the time to get to know him, her. This will save you a lot of time later on. In a negotiation, do not push too hard by demanding rigid timelines, quick results, etc. Play better on emotions to catch the Mexican and motivate him. First, play on positive emotions, and little by little you will develop your technical, commercial, and professional arguments. That said, you have to be careful because they can, because of their natural and strong enthusiasm, commit themselves to things that they will not be able to accomplish later. It is important to make sure that what has been said, what has been negotiated, reflects reality of what is possible. The fifth point, the management of meetings in Mexico. Sometimes in Mexico meetings can seem to be very informal. Rarely will there be an agenda and items to work on before the meeting. Many times, meetings are long talks that may not seem to have a well-defined objective. It is important to try, as much as possible, to impose a certain framework to make meetings with Mexicans as efficient as possible. Meetings should serve to define objectives and time, assign tasks, designate responsibilities, make decisions, etc. To impose a strict framework of the meeting is very important to make them efficient. Define a framework such as the timing of the meeting, the agenda, the points to be discussed during the meeting that everyone should prepare before the meeting to present the results on the day of the meeting. Last important point, does not forget the minutes of the meeting. For this you will have to designate a participant of the meeting to be the person who will write down all the decisions made, and actions decided during the meeting and the role of each one in relation to what was decided. Each participant should receive these minutes no later than the day following the meeting. Sixth point, final tips for working better with Mexicans. A rule in Mexico, the first one to yell loses. It is important not to lose control. Given the susceptibility of Mexicans, it is important to stay in control when things don't go as planned or when deadlines aren't respected. We are in a moving business environment in Mexico, and you have to stay calm. If you get upset, you risk losing the business. Have a lot of emotional intelligence and know how to manage frustration. For the same reasons as the previous point, knowing how to manage your emotions, to show emotional intelligence is very important in Mexico. Emotionally, we are often on a roller coaster ride, and knowing how to manage our frustrations is just as important. Knowing how to deal with uncertainty. Since the business environment in Mexico is moving and changing, we operate in Mexico with almost permanent uncertainty. This quality becomes very important to survive the changes. Some cultures will do this very well, for others it will be more difficult. Do not forget that patience and stubbornness are important qualities to develop your business in Mexico. To be serene professionally in Mexico, you must learn patience. Business is done, but socialization, meals, and poor planning make it take longer than in some countries. Tenacity is another quality that you should have. Do not look for logic in everything. We do not have the same logic. We do not all think in the same way according to our cultures. Some cultures are extremely rational, Cartesian, logical, rigid, and others are more flexible, mystical, symbolic, etc. This is the case in Mexico. You don't always have to try to understand how things are done. They just happen. Be flexible and tolerant. For all the reasons mentioned above, it is necessary to be very flexible, to accept changes, delays, reversals of situations, and tolerance is part of the panoply of qualities to develop if you want to develop your business in the Mexican market. Be detailed and very specific when giving information to perform tasks. When you give instructions or orders to your Mexican teams, you have to be very precise about what you want, underline the details that are important to you. Mexicans are distracted in their way of working, they manage several tasks at the same time, often missing details in the final result. Know how to use the reactivity and creativity of Mexicans. Mexicans don't anticipate or plan very little. This means that they react in real time according to the circumstances. This way of working has developed a great capacity to adapt to the solicitations of the markets and a great reactivity to the movements and changes of the unstable environment. It is therefore necessary to know how to use this natural reactivity and creativity of Mexicans. This is the end of our journey into the Mexican business culture. I hope that this information and advice will be useful for the development of your business in Mexico. Behind this video is the team of Olivier Soumah-Mis, a consulting firm named after its founder, who is one of the world's pioneers in intercultural management. Thanks to our network, Cross-Cultural Consultants Network, of 210 specialists, consultants, coaches, all specialists in training, consulting, coaching and intercultural management, we are present in 85 countries, we can work in 45 languages. If you would like a more personalized, more specific support, we are at your disposal to prepare you and your teams who have to work in an international and multicultural environment. Don't hesitate to contact us. Here are our details.